getting so good I don't even have to say it myself. But gentlemen, such a pleasure to see you. Okay, so Chumash Bereshis ends. The Ramban says it's the end of the discussion of the fathers. It's the next generation. It's the discussion of the children. Now this is today comes out as a very meaningful time. Today is the yahrzeit of my father-in-law, Moshe Shimon ben Pinchas Shraga. We're going to talk about him a little bit. Today is his fourth yahrzeit and fifth yahrzeit, and we'll talk about him in a bit. But in the meantime, I would like to first introduce something from the Parsha. The Bnei Yisrael are in Mitzrayim. The Jews are in Egypt. It's terrible. It's the worst situation imaginable. They're enslaved, they're beaten, their children are being put to death, they're being drowned, they're being placed into buildings as bricks. It's horrible. It's terrible, terrible suffering. And Moshe is growing up in the palace of Paro, a privileged prince. And he knows, though, because his mother was the nurse that used to take care of him, he knows who he is, and he knows where he's from. And he goes out to the Jewish people to see their pain. He wants to take part in the suffering of his brothers. He can't end it, but he wants to be part of it. And the time comes, he protects the innocent, he protects a person being beaten by the Egyptian overseer, he kills him. He intervenes when two Jews are fighting, they turn on him, he runs away, he's by Yisro, and then the time comes, he's the shepherd of his sheep, and he sees the bush, the burning bush. And Hashem speaks to him. And he says, you're going to be the one who's going to get the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. And Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, is extremely, extremely uncomfortable with this mission that he's being sent on. And he says to Hashem, who am I to do this? Can I take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim? Vayomer, Hashem says to him, Ki ehye imach. This is a very important word. Ki ehye imach. I will be with you. Vizelcha, Isaac is a sign that I sent you, and he goes on that eventually they're going to have the Torah at this place. And Moshe says to them, I'm going to go to the Hashem, I'm going to go to the Jewish people, and I'm going to say the God of your fathers is coming to speak, to say he sent me to you. They're going to ask me, what's his name? Why are they asking what God's name is? Why will they ask that question? The God of your grandfather, the God of your great-grandfather. What's the question? What did they call him until then? There's a lot of discussion about this. I'm going to go with one very, I think, simple and basic line. And that is, they're asking, what kind of salvation is this going to be? Is this going to be a permanent one, or is this going to be a temporary one? And Hashem says, my name, to tell them, Vayomer Elohim Moshe, Ehyeh asher Ehyeh Elo. Vayomer Kosomar Livnei Yisrael, Ehyeh shlochani aleichem. What is my name? My name is I will be what I will be. And we don't even pronounce that word, except if we're saying I will be. But when we're saying it as the name of God, we don't even pronounce that word. So we say, Ehyeh, I will be. But when we're saying it as the name of Hashem, we don't even say it unless we're reading it in the Parshas. It's like one of the names of God. I will be. And he says, I will be what I will be. What does that even mean? So there's discussion in the Gemara, and Rashi brings it. I will be with you in this difficulty, and I will be with you in future difficulties. You know what the message is over there? There's going to be future difficulties. It's not going to be just one salvation. This is the source of all other exile that will happen, this exile in Egypt. And the Gemara says that Moshe says to Hashem, but I'm supposed to tell them that? He said, so the Mefarshim explain, no, that you asked my name. If they ask you that, you have to say it. But better to just say to them, Ehyeh. I will be sent me. And once you say that, then they're not going to ask you the name anymore. What is this name, I will be? What is that name? I'm going to segue for a moment to talk about my father-in-law. Without him, there would be no yeshiva. Without him and my mother-in-law. But his history starts a long time ago, almost 100 years ago. He was born about 1930 or so, forget the exact date, 1929 maybe. And he went into the Lodz ghetto when the Nazis took over, when he was 11 years old. He was bar mitzvahed in the ghetto. The ghetto was easy compared to what came next. And he was sent on a train to Auschwitz with his father. His brother had been taken earlier to a work camp. And he was in Auschwitz for a few months, and he survived. And he went to another camp. And he went to another camp. The last camp was called Elrich Lager. Lager Elrich. Lager is camp or sub-camp. Elrich. It was a sub-camp of a place called Dora. Dora is a place where the Germans, where the Nazis used to build their rockets, their missiles that they were sending across Europe. And they were bombing with these missiles. And towards the end of the war, now they had a sub-camp, Elrich, which was a very bad place to be. Without getting into, we'll get into some of the detail. Towards the end of the war, all the Nazi rocket scientists made a deal with the US government that they would come start a rocket program in America, and then America would have military superiority if they would build the rocket program, because they were the world's biggest experts in this. Of course, their Jewish workers had to be wiped out. You see, the Americans said, we'll take Germans, but we won't take people who are part of the Nazi party, and we won't take people who were involved in oppression. We'll just take scientists, men of peace and wisdom. And so all the Nazis had to scrub their past in order to come to America. You heard of NASA? They started NASA. That's how NASA was built. This is not, I'm not making something up. This is well known. Werner von Braun was the head of it, and you can Google it. There's a lot of information out there about him. And there's still a place in Alabama where, Red Hook, where German is the spoken language till today, amongst many of these scientists and people and their families. And so they were very interested in the Jews not making it out. And when the Russian and American forces started coming close, my father-in-law and a friend hid in a coal cellar as the day of the death march that they were going to evacuate the camp. And they called these marches death marches because they shoot people who struggled or straggled or tried to drink or tried to eat on the way, and many people died of weakness on the way. My father-in-law had already survived one, and he knew he couldn't survive another one. And just before he got free, his father-in-law was killed. His father was killed. He was 15 years old. And he stole some potatoes from the kitchen because he had a job that brought him into the kitchen a few times. And he threw these raw potatoes into the coal cellar. And him and a friend, on the day of the evacuation, are lifting loaves of bread, and bringing them to the trucks, because the Germans are driving in trucks while they're walking. And when they went back for the last load, there was nothing left. They went back and they ran and they hid in the coal cellar. And everybody was lined up and taken out of the camp, but there was 2 people missing. The Germans are looking for them, and the dogs are looking for them. You can't hide from dogs. Well, for some reason, the dogs, their scent got confused by the window of the coal cellar. We have a picture of this coal cellar with my father-in-law and mother-in-law standing next to it 50 years later. And the dogs couldn't find them. And they spent a few days in the coal cellar. Then some Poles came to get coal, and they found them. They went to hide in the crawl space above the kitchen. And they were dying of starvation. And the American soldiers came and liberated them. American soldiers came to the camp And they heard people coming. They didn't know. They knew it wasn't the Germans because the Americans had soft shoes, soft-soled shoes, and the Germans had their boots. And they heard that they were quieter. They didn't know if it was Russians or Americans. They were hoping for the Americans, and it was the Americans. And so it was that on the last day of Pesach, they were liberated by the American soldiers, even though they had really escaped before that. And he was 15 years old. He went back to Lodz, city of hundreds of thousands of people. Maybe somebody's alive. He gets off the train and is walking, and he sees a person come out of a barber shop. It was his brother, who was 8 years older than him, who he never would have recognized because he was much thinner and he had grown a beard while he was in the camps. He had just taken off the beard. And so he looked exactly like him. His brother couldn't recognize him after being in the camps. And they found each other. And the first place that would take both of them was Australia. And they came to Australia. They both got married there. They both built beautiful families there. They helped rebuild the Jewish community there. They were from the founders of the shuls, involved in the schools, involved in the communal organizations. And I ended up meeting my wife when I went on a program to Australia to do outreach. I didn't realize how successful I would be, Baruch Hashem. And then my in-laws came to Eretz Yisrael. It was their dream for their entire life to be able to come to Eretz Yisrael. And at every family simcha, I would say, Saba, did you ever imagine? No, he never imagined there was hope for him. He never imagined he could build a home. He never imagined he could have a life. He never imagined, after what he had seen and been through, that it would ever be possible to build a good, fine life. And I remember we had a boy in yeshiva who went through a terrible time in his life. And he told me his life is over. And I brought him to my father-in-law. He was already an alumnus. He had been at yeshiva a few years at the time, but he had gone through a terrible event. And he said, my life is over. I'll never get married. I'll never this. I'll never that. He had a whole list of reasons why his life would never be a good life. But he went and he spoke with my father-in-law, did a lot of work, had a lot of support from his Rabbi. And Baruch Hashem, he's married with a few children, living a beautiful life. Hashem said, I will be with you. I will be with you. Don't lose connection. We don't even have to talk about the future. I will be with you. There'll be other bad times. I will be with you then as well. Who sent me? Says Moshe. Hashem, who says, I will be with you. That's the name he's giving. I will be with you. We just have to make ourselves vessels to connect to that and to feel it. I really was going to finish with this, but I wanted to say one thing. Every single day, my father-in-law would wrap his tefillin over the numbers B8787 that the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, had put on his arm, trying to turn him into a number, not a person. Ve'ele Shemos b'nei Yisrael. We have names. We're not numbers. We count. We matter. Gentlemen, have beautiful Shabbos.